In this episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks, we have Nvidia, we have AMD, we have Intel, and we have Qualcomm. Oh yeah, it's on. Next. Welcome back to yet another fine episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks podcast. I would be Dave Altavilla. That would be me. And with me, as always, are my compatriots from the hottest of hot hardware sites in the world. There's only one of us, last I checked. Marco Chiappetta and Chris Getting. Let's start with you, Marco. Are you feeling hot today? Good.
Beautiful day here in Connecticut. The only thing that's warming me up is this GPU test bed that's running next to me, heating up the office. Something going on in that test rig right now. It's crazy.
I had a couple of boxes show up for myself today, and toys be arriving, which is always fun. Chris, you got toys over there, or are you just geeking out with the knobs and dials?
I've got some toys, I guess. No, we've talked about it. I've got the EK machine. We're getting there. We'll get the giveaway going. We'll get there.
Chris, stop milking it. No comment.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I'm just messing with you. You can't be all right. Wait a minute. Did you crack a beer yet? Are we cracking beers?
I have not cracked a beer yet, and I've actually got to go help a friend move a shed after the show. So
you have to work after you work.
Yep.
After you work. Okay. Well, I've got me a Foley Brothers Brewing Company from up your neck of the woods, kind of. Not really. It's across the way a bit from what town is it? Brandon, Vermont. It's from Vermont, the other northern country in the six New England states.
Yep, they're a little out there, but we love them.
Maine, Vermont, yeah. It's all the same, isn't it, Chris?
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not. Yeah, let's. So that's what I'm imbibing to lubricate the gears and the cogs. Marco, you doing branched chain amino acids or some other fitness drink?
No, water. I've completely lost my fitness mojo. This is my lame attempt at trying to get some of it back. But yeah, the kids are back in school now, so I might be able to get back to somewhat of a normal schedule. And yeah, definitely have to try to get the diet and fitness regime back in gear here.
Yeah, man. I've been actually able to exercise a little bit, but I've been hitting the neighborhood, running around and then throwing the dumbbells around. But man, the road work is just brutal on the knees and back. Stinks getting old. I like the elliptical at Planet Fitness much better. I don't feel like going to Planet Fitness anymore. That's the problem.
So I think we have James saying the audio is too hot. I don't know if there's anything that can be done.
So I just had Brittany pop in the room and said that audio is good. I think he means your looks are smoking hot.
Oh, good. All right. So 2-1 says we.
I know that's out there, but
2-1 says we're good. Also, all right, we're good. We're rolling then.
Okay, if we're hot, but the audio isn't hot, then we're good. Temperature-wise, at least. I don't know about philosophically, but anyways, hey, let's let's move on to the headlines in tech. We had a few news stories today or this week, I should say, that kind of broke the wire that are interesting that we'll mention quickly before we dive into the meaty topics, the deep dive reviews and under the hood coverage that Marco pulled together and a few others on the Hot Hardware team. But let's talk about Microsoft Xbox Series S. Easy for me to say. Entry-level next-gen console officially announced at just $299. So the Xbox Series S, as in Sam, not X. This is a next-gen console. I don't know, Chris, if you can strap that up on the video, but anyways, it's interesting. The thinnest console around has next generation AMD hardware on board powering it. So it is RDNA 2 powered, but it's something like, I want to say, I don't know, it's like a third the power if you did the math on the flops versus the Xbox Series X. If you just look at the specs, but it's interesting at $299. That's a pretty great price point for a next generation console, the thin version console. from Microsoft. I don't know if you guys are planning on console gaming anytime soon, Marco, but good to see it.
I got an original, an Xbox One X, and I think after the review, I used it 3 or 4 times, when I had friends over and we had a couple drinks and needed something to do. Otherwise, I'm a PC guy, man. I am in front of the PC.
Yeah. So Xbox Series X is 12 T-flops of compute performance, and S is 4. So that's the distinction. It's a lower powered, obviously thinner and lighter, smaller box than the X, the next generation X that is forthcoming. So the Xbox Series S at $299, the X at $499 from Microsoft. I don't know, man. I think Microsoft's got game in this one, and we'll see if they can compete with Sony for PlayStation 5, man.
See, this kind of stuff's confusing, man. Like this seems like the one you get if you have a 1080p TV and you don't care about the 4K. But it's just going to muddle the market and confuse people. I don't know. I mean, I guess I'd like the small size, but to lop off 2/3 of the performance or whatever it is seems a little nutty.
You're a performance nut, though. There are people that just have full HD TVs, But
it's like there might be instances where the experience is different, and you might be at a friend's house who has the X, and you use this one, and it's not quite the same, and it's like, hey, what the heck, But whatever, we'll see what happens.
I agree.
I'll be gaming on PC anyway.
Me too. And Chris, probably you too, right? PC Master Race, brother.
Yep, I'm gonna keep with the PC. Sorry, got too many buttons to press here.
He's getting punchy from punching all these buttons. All right, so let's flip it to the next one here and talk about Samsung's a 980 Pro PCI Express 4 SSD surfaced recently, and that looks interesting at 7 gigs a second throughput on the reads, and I think it's 5 gigs a second throughput on the writes. Yes. 1 terabyte version of the 980 Pro. Really happy to see Samsung stepping into the PCI Express 4 arena. Folks are saying, what's the next generation Phison controller that's supposed to be hot? This is Samsung's. Marco, your thoughts about this versus that next generation? I'm trying to think who's OEMing with the Phison controller these days. Is it AData? Maybe a couple others?
Basically everybody is using Phison. But so Samsung has been making killer SSDs forever. This one has been in development a long time. We saw it at CES. And Samsung had PCI Express 4, PCI Express 4 Enterprise SSDs. This will be their first PCIe 4 consumer SSD. Considering it's going to have the Pro branding and those kind of specs, probably going to kick ass. I guess we'll know as soon as we get one in hand. Hopefully it's soon. Yeah,
I like me some Samsung as well, and I'm eager to see it myself. And then, interesting little tidbit today from the folks at AMD. And we'll talk about this quickly. We got a little bit of a hint of this last night. Frank Azor, VP, Chief Gaming Architect. Actually, I'm not sure if he's a VP. I'm sorry. I gave him an extra title there. Chief Gaming Architect at AMD actually tweeted out something about tomorrow. He was singing Broadway musical songs from the Broadway musical Annie. Tomorrow, you're only a day away. And then, wouldn't you know, today, AMD set some dates. So Radeon RX 6000 and Zen 3 October surprise. AMD sets dates for a new journey, and that was the title of the email, A New Journey. And actually the creatives that they sent. A new journey begins, RDNA 2 and Zen 3. So that means we're going to see big Navi, something that they're calling a Radeon RX 6000. And Zen 3 Vermeer processors. Thoughts, Marco? This is coming a couple of different weeks in October. First part of October and latter part of October.
Yeah, man. So I'm 100% confident Zen 3 is going to kick ass. Yeah. I am based on Nvidia's announcements last week. I think Big Navi has a heck of a fight on its hand, but I don't know, man. Like if you look back at the RX 5700 XT. If AMD was a little more aggressive and just made it a little bigger, it would have hung with a 2080 Ti. So, with some architectural tweaks, some new mojo, a bigger chip, we could have a really, really fun GPU fight heading into the Christmas season this year. I'm gonna stay optimistic.
Yeah, yeah, it is going to be interesting to watch that. And I tell you, from what we expect and what we've seen, we're going to dig into this a little bit later of RTX 30 series and Ampere from Nvidia. Man, it is a tall order for AMD to scale with RDNA 2, with Big Navi, with Radeon RX 6000. Not saying it can't be done, right? But we don't know until we know. But my goodness, my goodness, it's fun. It's fun. Yeah, this is the exciting stuff, and it's great to roll into Q4 with all of this stuff on tap. We've got Tiger Lake on tap as well from Intel. Man, from mobile to desktop, CPU, GPU, it's going to be firing. We're going to be busy as heck. That's the only problem with that. Just like no life.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Come on, laugh with me. Laugh or you'll cry.
No, I'm good. There's keep an eye on the site, because starting tomorrow through the next basically 3 weeks, there's big stuff hitting basically every couple of days.
Yeah, that's for sure. There will be a regular cadence of big goodness. So yeah.
Yes.
Stick around for that. And so cool. Frank wasn't lying in his tweet. He was teasing and tap dancing and singing Broadway songs, and lo and behold, there you have it. So we have dates on the calendar, specifically October 28th for RDNA 2 and October 8th for Zen 3. There you go. Mark your calendars and stay tuned to Hot Hardware, because we'll be covering it. And AMD is going to queue up the big guns. We'll see.
That's right.
Beauty. All right. Well, then let's move on to the meaty stuff. And where do we want to go first? I think we want to start with some mobile and then get into the meaty stuff. Let's quickly talk about something interesting. Galaxy Book S shootout. Intel Lakefield versus Snapdragon 8CX. So Intel Lakefield versus Qualcomm Snapdragon 8CX in what was, interestingly enough, the exact same skins. So this is the Samsung Galaxy Book S. There are two varietals of it, like a fine wine. One is Intel Lakefield powered with Foveros 3D chip stack technology. And the other is Qualcomm Snapdragon 8CX, which has been out for a little while, maturing in the Windows on ARM ecosystem, maturing in terms of performance, maturing in terms of compatible apps a little bit. But this was the first Lakefield with Intel Foveros technology-based machine we've had in the lab. Good old Ben Funk kicked the tires and lit the fires on both of these machines. He initially covered the Galaxy Book S powered by Snapdragon a couple of months back, and then it was a natural to send him the Lakefield version so that he could look at that, because identical machine, probably different thermal solutions, but same display, almost the identical batteries. I think there's a 1 watt-hour difference between batteries. For all intents and purposes, an identical vehicle to display two different ultra low power, ultra light notebook platforms. Marco, thoughts on this expose in terms of performance and experience and all that stuff? It was not quite what we expected, actually, in certain spots.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. So basically, you see the Intel system with really strong single thread because of that Sunny Cove core on Lakefield. But anytime those Atom-based cores come into play, it got beat up pretty hardcore by the Snapdragon. And believe it or not, the Snapdragon also had stronger GPU performance. And then in battery life, also way better battery life for the Qualcomm platform. So you see some strong numbers for thin and light out of the Lakefield machine in things like speedometer 2 and browser-based benchmarks where single thread is important, and also in the single thread test for Geekbench. But once anything multi-threaded came into play, or all of the graphics-related tests, the Snapdragon platform was surprisingly surprisingly how much faster it was. And then to also offer such better battery life for this kind of, always on, always connected platform. Even that first gen 8CX seems really strong now. Keep in mind that this second gen was just announced, so theoretically these machines are just going to get better. So this was an interesting challenge, and the one thing that was really surprising was how much the Lakefield machine's performance dropped off on battery. On AC, performance in PC Mark was the best. Put it on battery and it dropped to last. So just the overall consistency of experience was even better on the Qualcomm platform. So just a really interesting article. I'm glad Ben was able to compare those machines.
Yeah. We rarely get a pair of notebooks like that, that are identical skins, identical, physical structure. Usually it's some different model with a little bit of different look, a little bit of different display. It's really hard to nail down notebook platforms, laptop platforms, and compare apples to apples. You can get a relative gauge, and we certainly have graphs that show all the different types of platforms in all of our reviews over the years, but very rare that we get, an identical SKU from a physical standpoint. So it was fascinating to compare the two, and I think what I took away from this was this. For me, it was Intel's foray into big. LITtle, and certainly 3D chip stacked technology. First time out of the gate, to hit a home run's real hard. It's brand new packaging technology, through silicon vias, all this, super cutting edge stuff to get this done, to get an x86 chip, 5-core x86 chip with Xe graphics, Gen 11 graphics. That's a lot. And I think, Marco, you and I expected better performance. Are we surprised that something like Snapdragon 8CX performed better than it, generally speaking? Probably not, because it's pretty, Qualcomm's had like 3 or 4 iterations of Snapdragon in the Windows on ARM platform for a couple of years now, right? I think goes back to Snapdragon 835, then 850, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, so I think the 8CX was the first purpose built for the platform. Just to go back, it's not Xe graphics, it's Gen 11 graphics in
Gen
Lakefield.
11. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it's not Xe. So the Xe graphics looking very strong in Tiger Lake. But yeah, so with the test that we ran, with the cross-platform stuff we ran, where we can keep stuff native, the Snapdragon looks very good. The one thing to consider, though, is just everything just runs on the Lakefield. It's a full PC. It's x86, whereas there's no 64-bit x86 app emulation on the Snapdragon. And if you were to be running apps under emulation on the Snapdragon, the performance and the battery life would change. So neither one is absolutely perfect, but in this particular comparison, in that Samsung vehicle, the Qualcomm platform just appears to be, the better solution overall.
Yeah, and good catch there. Forgive me. I was thinking, you're talking Ice Lake graphics in Lakefield. Theoretically, I was expecting better performance from the Ice Lake graphics, Gen 11 graphics in Lakefield, right? So, yes, not Tiger Lake, not Xe graphics, but Ice Lake. Ice Lake, I guess caliber. And we didn't really see that performance. It seemed like the chip was thermally saturated a little bit in spots, and that kind of was the limiting factor was thermals. But who knows? There's a lot of different wrinkles that could come into the mix here. One interesting point is that still, on the Qualcomm side, Windows on ARM side, it's still kind of, rough going in spots where, certain apps aren't going to run. They're not native. When you talk about a platform like this that is, it's a productivity machine, it's a consumption machine, it's not a content creation machine. Office apps, hum along on Snapdragon, because Microsoft is worked on that. Certainly firing up Netflix and YouTube and all that good stuff is going to run just fine. And battery life, on Snapdragon, it's all good. Where you get into a little bit mucky territory are the, 64-bit, apps that just aren't going to run, right? And I know, Marco, you've done some work in that space as well.
Yeah, I mean, there are compromises with both platforms.
Yeah.
It is what it is. These aren't, they're very thermally constrained. They're smaller, they're lower power. There's only so much it's going to do versus, a full power platform. But, in this particular comparison, if you're looking for something thin and light that's going to last a long time on battery, the Snapdragon based, Samsung machine's pretty nice.
Yeah, man, it's days and days and days. So check it out. Pour through the numbers yourself, make the assessments yourself. And that's kind of always what we underscore with all of our reviews is, here's the data, here's our opinion. Now you form your opinion. That's our view whenever we, put up a review is, hey, decide for yourself what's good and what might not work for you. And with that, we'll move on. I think there was something in the chat.
Before we move on, I was going to say, Gizmo just mentioned getting beat on basically all fronts against a chip which is simulating x86 is quite a bad start. See, the thing is, the comparisons we made were with mostly native ARM apps, so it's not simulating x86. It was actually running native ARM versions of the apps. So even the PC Mark test is running. So it's not a native ARM version of Office, but Microsoft did compile some of it for ARM. And the Geekbench benchmark is native ARM, so it wasn't running under emulation. And same with the graphics test. But if you look at the browser tests, the Intel machine, even with the native Edge browser, which is also native ARM, the Intel machines is way out in front in those tests. So it's not all emulation. If you add the emulation, the mix definitely changes. And Dave, we saw your questions. We'll get to Dave S's questions as soon as we switch to the NVIDIA stuff.
Yeah. Lots of stuff. And you said something about me in there too, or was that you speaking about Dave S?
That's Dave S. Yeah.
Okay.
Dave
all
S.
right. Cool. Yeah. No. And that's important to make that distinction. Native versus non-native and benchmarks or stuff that won't run on Snapdragon. When we ran the PC Mark test, the intent was let's show real applications, Office Suite, and that. Currently is compiled for Windows on ARM. So that's a good test of real world applications. If you look at something like, I don't know, 3D Mark or whatnot, these are synthetic tests. So decide for yourself, look at, what you would run on an ultra thin and light notebook like this, see if it's native. And in that case, maybe the Snapdragon platform is a good solution. But yeah, all right, let's shift gears. Let's talk about under the hood, and then, or should we talk about the toolkit first? Probably. What do you think, Marco? Your call.
Let's talk under the hood because the toolkit's how we'll be able to evaluate.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, let's talk about Nvidia GeForce RTX 30 series under the hood of Ampere. Again, Marco burning the midnight oil. And covering the architecture, the silicon architecture underneath, that GeForce RTX 3080 card that we'll be seeing reviews on soon. And really just Ampere GPU in general, it's fitting that the first three letters of that product name is AMP because every single resource seems to be amped up. Whether you look at CUDA cores going from 3072 in Turing to 8704 CUDA cores in Ampere, the deep learning flops from the tensor cores, the RT core, boosts, in resources, 2x the L1 cache bandwidth. I mean, lots of, next level provisioning for this beastly chip. Thoughts and takeaways from I guess NVIDIA gave us a deep dive. We were kind of drinking from the fire hose, kind of digesting it all on the fly and reporting. Interesting power management now too, as well, which I found pretty cool. Thoughts in general, and then we can dive into the weeds at will.
Yeah, so like anyone that was watching last week when we were talking about the initial Ampere disclosures, there were sort of some questions on like, was it really double the CUDA cores? Were they counting the additional math unit differently? But man, it's like essentially, yeah, like it's double Turing. So the RTX 3080 is not even the big chip. The 3090's got the big chip with over
Right.
10,000 cores. So that the 3080 that's coming in at about $700, give or take. Partner card's probably going to be a little more, but around that price range, you're talking the 8704 CUDA cores with 30 teraflops of compute and 760 gigabytes per second of memory bandwidth. And, the fill rate's even super high, 164 gigapixels per second fill rate, 465 gigatexels. So like monster chip in terms of compute, in terms of bandwidth, in terms of fill rate. It's just, it's a beast. And in addition to being able to do, twice the amount of math per clock, you do have that double the bandwidth on the L1, so it can get fed just as fast. The speeds and feeds throughout the chip are faster throughout. So, we're not going to probably see that 2x scaling that Jensen was talking about across the board. But when we can look at actual numbers, the 3080 is going to be an absolute monster in a large number of workloads, not just, ray tracing workloads. And the thing with these architecture pieces, we pick up more and digest more after the fact because we had one day to pull this off. After the briefing, a couple of days later, there was another conversation where NVIDIA initially said, we're not going to disclose anything new. So we went into it, this is going to be a good refresher. And it was like, oh my God, we have one day to write about all this new stuff that we saw.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of work to pull off. There's still additional detail that's going to come out as embargoes lift. But there's, tons of new hardware and capabilities inside Ampere over and above just making it bigger. There's tweaks to basically every section inside the chip to improve performance and efficiency. Now, the one caveat, so like if you go to, Jensen made the claim of 1.9x performance per watt.
Yeah.
But if you look deeper at the graph, you'll see, an RTX 2080 is 250 watt card. The 3080 is a 320 watt card. So absolute power is higher. It's using more power. But performance is going to be otherworldly versus the 2080. And what NVIDIA did to kind of quell that higher power is come up with this, what should be really awesome new cooler. So one of the things that NVIDIA disclosed in the second talk was just exactly how much cooler and quieter the cooler is on 3080. So for example, when the Turing at full 250 watts is, let's say the GPU is running at 81C, the card is typically a Founders Edition card would be outputting 32 dBA of noise or 32 dBA sound pressure level, whereas the Ampere card at the full 320 watts, so much higher wattage, is running at only 78C and 30 dBA. So essentially, at any point across the curve, the Ampere card can either be running cooler or running at higher power with lower noise. It's an interesting prospect. And I'm one of the guys so immediately after this information came out, there was lots of FUD. Oh my God, is this the next, what was it? The next Kepler? It's such high power.
Yeah.
I don't think people care about power as long as the card is quiet and runs relatively cool. Yeah, it's going to pump some heat out of the system. But if the experience is fine and the card's quiet, I don't think a lot of enthusiasts care. So it's going to be really interesting to actually get these tested and see how they perform in the real world.
Yeah, heat can be a concern, depending on your environment. Certainly in the summertime, having a gaming PC heating up your either your office, your den, what have you, may be an issue. But you make good points on what struck me. Certainly the silicon architecture is impressive, and it's a big honking powerful chip with lots of resources. Significant resource gains in virtually every portion of the chip. But what NVIDIA did to address that power solution was, and power and cooling solutions is what impressed me. I think the most. They also have dedicated separate power rails for graphics, for the CUDA cores and for memory. So they did some interesting things with power from a supply standpoint and from a cooling standpoint. And yeah, to be able to offer that much more horsepower, that many more CUDA cores, and drop, the dB output, the acoustic signature 10 dB and 20C cooler on a 3080 from a 2080. That's some pretty great engineering. And what's struck me over the years with Nvidia is that their products, I mean, and they have a massive team of engineers, tons of software engineers, tons of hardware engineers, but their design process, top to bottom, is highly optimized. I mean, they've had some missteps along the way, and we've seen some Nvidia cards that have hair dryer kind of thermal solutions, and but that was years and years ago. But what we get now is really well optimized thermal solutions and power solutions, and I think that's what's impressive to me. I'm going to be unboxing the 3080 with you as well, and yeah, I'm fascinated by that card, by the physical thermal solution in that card, and what it can deliver for the horsepower that's under the hood. They really engineered it well. I mean, frankly, and this, folks are, the AMD guys are going to get their hackles up on this, but frankly, I was expecting more, from the 5700 series in terms of a thermal solution. It was just, another squirrel cage blower fan. And I'm like, okay, fine. Is that going to hold up for Big Navi? I'm wondering what the thermal solution for Big Navi is going to be like. I don't know if that's going to cut it.
Yeah, the thing with AMD today is different than the AMD that launched
Yes.
Navi. They just don't
Absolutely.
have, so the partner cards, right now in my test rig is a 5700 XT from Power Color, because I revamped the entire test bed preparing for Ampere and running fresh numbers on it. This is a really awesome card. For the money, for the noise, it's quiet. Yeah, it's a little big, but it's a good looking card. It's quieter than the reference card. It's cooler than the reference card. Overclocks better than the reference card. So yeah, what the partners do is pretty nice. What AMD does with Big Navi, I think, is going to be a much bigger splash, because it's just a much bigger company now with much more resources, and they have much more insight into the architecture,
right?
And multiple generations of experience with the consoles. Like, there's a lot more, a lot more knowledge and experience going into Big Navi. So there's, and also, AMD leading edge on process. So they have a lot of things going for them heading into this launch. It's a matter of the decisions they made a couple of years ago building these chips. Were they the right ones to prepare for what Nvidia did? We'll have to just wait and see. It's only another month away, but we should probably jump to some of the questions in the chat.
Yeah. Hang on a second. You touched on something that kind of twitched the nerve for me, and you really hit the nail on the head. AMD has such inertia right now with their successes, from 7-nanometer process, pioneering and really driving volume from it to, just in general what that company from a growth standpoint has been going through. They have absolutely every resource available to them, to make our Radeon RX 6000 the best it can be, but except for, yes, those bets that they placed probably close to 2 years ago. It's at least an 18-month design cycle, from womb to tomb, right? I mean, that's what's going to be fascinating to watch is, okay, did you make the bets as well, as you did with Ryzen, second gen Ryzen, and now third, Zen 3? I mean, did you make those kind of, design and engineering and silicon investment bets in a similar fashion, and will they be successful? It's fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a really, really great time to be a gamer this Christmas, regardless, because no matter what, from every company, whether it's Intel Mobile, AMD Desktop, AMD Mobile, Nvidia Desktop GPUs, AMD Desktop GPUs, we're getting, next gen high level stuff coming. So there's going to be tons of stuff to choose from going into the holidays from basically every company. Going to be all good stuff.
Cool. Let's hit those questions.
Sure. First thing that popped in from Dave S. a while back, he says, is NVIDIA asking reviewers to use AMD systems to showcase Ampere on PCIe 4? I did not get any specific instruction, and I can say from experience, PCIe 4, except for some special use cases, it's not going to have any impact on gaming performance with current gen games and displays. So no, they're not asking that we test on PCIe 4. It's probably not going to really mean anything in terms of the benchmark scores. And I think Dave was also asking, so that was Gizmo. We got to that one already.
Lots of questions from Dave.
Yeah,
I like it.
I'm not sure what James was saying about what's the electrical amp named after. I'm not sure what that question is. Dave S. also asking, could your review do a CUDA core efficiency comparison? I'm not doing an exact efficiency comparison, but I will be doing 3 different GPU compute tests, 2 rendering and 1 mathematical with a couple aspects to it. I am compiling numbers now, so I will have some of that in there. Bootman was saying the power rail was interesting as it wants more power, but how much memory power rail was interesting, but how much more power? I don't think splitting the graphics and memory rail was strictly about just power.
Right.
I think doing GDDR6 required some special mojo, and they want that cleaner, separate rail for
signal
memory.
integrity, baby. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So you want. I think that's part of the reason why it was separated. It also makes sense to not have both of them clocking up together. But yeah, that's that I think is a function of the GDDR6X. And then what else popped in here? We see a bunch of guys chatting about their old cards. It was the FX series with the Dustbusters on them. We have Coco Commando. What is he asking about?
The Dustbusters. Yeah, it made me laugh.
So, and then Dave S. asking, the NVIDIA Direct IO doesn't want higher bandwidth path. It's always better to have higher bandwidth, but none of the 3080 on down, none of them are doing SLI. There's no SLI on anything but the 3090. So unless there's something we haven't learned about yet, I'm not sure what that extra PCI Express bandwidth is going to offer right now. James asking, did we try 360 hertz yet? Not in house, but I have experienced it. It's surprising the difference that it makes in clarity with fast-paced movie. You'd think, once you get past a certain point, you don't see it, but you actually can. I saw a demo from Asus that I was like, oh, wow, you really can see the difference, especially if you look. I mean, if you look at a high-speed camera, you obviously see it. But no, personally, don't have it here in front of me. Fastest I have in the lab is 144.
We see. Did we see a demo from Asus way back in CES? Was that when you saw it? I was there with you, right?
Yeah. Yep. With Asus and Nvidia, actually.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was a while ago, man. And when we could see each other in person.
Yeah, back when we were allowed to be, in groups
in a crowded CES hall. Crazy.
That's right.
Oh my God, so weird. Well, anyways, no, that's cool.
Wait. Dave S. makes a good point. The NVIDIA Direct Storage. He was talking about RTX IO. I got confused.
Yeah.
So. That's interesting. PCIe 4 may make a difference there, but there's 2 aspects to RTX IO, right? You have the bandwidth from the SSD to the GPU, but then you also have the offloading to the GPU to do the compression and decompression, which frees up the CPU to do a lot more stuff.
Right.
So actually, I can't answer that clearly without testing it, and we won't be able to test that because there's no games that use direct RTX IO yet and the direct storage API yet. That's going to be a few months down the line. That actually may be one of those situations where you see faster load times with PCIe 4.
I'm gonna yeah. Well, okay. So I would hazard a guess that it's going to be a walk before you run kind of thing, right? Because first of all, you got to have devs that are, programming, or developing for RTX IO or, direct storage, from storage to GPU memory directly versus going through the CPU complex. So that needs to be in. And then initially it's going to be like, okay, man, we got all this bandwidth. Now what do we do with it? And so you have to remember, we're coming from a point in time when everybody's, optimizing for bandwidth because game loads would get atrocious if they didn't. And so they're not tapping hardly any of it when you have, I don't know, was it 7 gigs a second available on reads from a PCI Express 4 link to storage. So it would surprise me if you'd see from 3 to 4 much of a diff initially. Eventually, yes. Once they're really, okay, now we get all this glorious bandwidth. What magical things can we do with it? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's still compression and decompression going on. But when it's piping data in, just feeding the pipe, you might see it. So we'll know in a few months. Yeah. So for the initial wave of reviews, it's going to have zero bearing.
Right.
Down the line could be a completely different story.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Cool stuff, though. I mean, I'm excited about that. We forgot all about that. Direct storage and RTX IO, and I'm assuming AMD is going to have that. Support that as well. Certainly because their GPUs and CPUs are in the consoles that implemented that initially. Anyways, that's an Xbox thing. Yeah, so that's a cool, huge quality of life gain. Right out of the hood, or right out of the gate. Excuse me. All right, let's. You want to shift gears and get to your fun little geek out reviewer toolkit?
Yeah, absolutely. So for everyone, we didn't really get to talk about every little aspect in the additional architecture piece. Just too much to talk about. We could kill 2 hours just on that. Stop by the site because it's all NVIDIA provided data. It's not independent tests, but there's actual performance comparisons for 3070, 3080, and 3090 in there. There's examples of RTX IO load times. There's examples of ray tracing of, frame comparisons of Turing versus Ampere. Go check that out to lay the foundation, because when the reviews hit, it's going to be best to understand exactly why it's faster in certain aspects, and that article will lay that foundation. But yeah, to get back to what Dave's saying, yesterday, I think it was yesterday, my brain is fried. We were lucky enough, HotHardware was lucky enough to be included in a little program NVIDIA did to test out these new NVIDIA Reviewer Toolkits for graphics performance during one of the additional talks after the main GeForce event. NVIDIA disclosed this little kit, and it consists of basically 3 things, right? There's one device called the LDAT, the latency display. Let me get this right because my brain is fried. The latency and display analysis tool, right? Yep. Then there's another part called the PCAT, the power capture analysis tool, and then a piece of software, the latest edition of FrameView version 1.1. Now, I have it attached to my test right here, so I can't pull it off and show you. But this is a really, really cool piece of kit. So the LDAT is essentially a luminance sensor that's directly attached to a mouse, which feeds data into a PC through USB, right? So what this little device does is allow us to position it over a display, and it knows the moment we click mouse and measures the time it takes for something to happen on screen. So if you want to measure, now it's commonly called input latency, or input lag. There's lots of names: end-to-end latency, motion to photon latency, input lag, input latency. It's all basically the same thing. And what it's telling you is how long it takes that click to be registered as something on the screen. Mm-hmm. And the LDAT, now you used to be able to measure that with high-speed cameras or building something with an Arduino and your own sensors. Pain in the stones. The average person is not going to be able to do that stuff. This now makes it way easy for us to test it. We literally have this. It's a little thing that sticks on the screen with an elastic band. We position it on the right spot of the screen. Typically, like if you're on a shooter, you want to put it at the end of the barrel so that when you click and there's muzzle flash, that luminance change of the luminance change of the muzzle flash gets measured, right? Mm-hmm. Very, very cool stuff. And then it also allows you to do like auto fire. So in this article, I was just explaining how this stuff works. When you're actually testing, you want to do like, an average of say 100 shots. So you tick the auto fire for 100 shots, place your sensor, bang, you have your average latency. Do that across a number of games. Or like this is the other interesting stuff that I hope I have time to eventually test. You can test latency across different frame rates, across different GPUs, across different games. There's so many different aspects to this, different mice. Well, with this kit, I can't do different mice, but different displays. Like there's so much stuff that you can test here. It's really, a mountain of data that you could produce. It's really, really cool.
Interesting. So, all right. We've got latency capture. We've got power capture, right? Mm-hmm. Power capture, PCAT with its interposer Does it shows you power by frame by frame?
No, so PCAT's awesome. To date, what most people have been doing for power and what we've been doing for power consumption numbers is we'll install a graphics card, take an idle power number from the outlet, right? So total system power consumption. Yeah. Then tax the GPU at 100%. That's load power for the GPU.
Right.
Great relative metric. It's perfectly, adequate as a means of comparison between GPUs because that's the only thing changing.
Real world. Yep.
But what PCAT does is it's basically sits in between the PCI Express slot and up to 3 8-pin PCI Express power feeds. Mm-hmm. And so the funny thing with the picture on the screen, I have it connected backwards there. I'm such an idiot, but it's the same difference. So it basically, it's measuring actual power just to the GPU through those feeds, right?
Right.
So
you're not including the slot.
Right. So what's great
watts in the slot.
What you can do is run a game, run a workload, and get not only that real-time graph.
Oh, you are including the slot.
Right. You get that real-time graph, but you also get min-max average. So now you can do a real perf per watt comparison. If this card averages this power with this workload at this frame rate, you can now say this card has better perf per watt. Even if it's higher wattage, if the performance is high enough, you could still have better perf per watt. Right. So really, really good data. And I'm showing the total power here. If you want to get nuts, you can graph it per individual rail. It's crazy.
Yeah. So this is all fascinating. So thanks for that understanding. I didn't dig into the weeds on this at all. I am so appreciative that you have, by the way, because it's a lot, but it's also great data. Latency is huge. Photon latency. Click to photon latency, and then power perf per watt, and then of course frame latency and all that good stuff that we're used to with traditional updates to frame view. What strikes me here is NVIDIA steps out, enables reviewers, or a certain subset of reviewers currently. Eventually, this is probably going to roll out on a broader scale with these tools. They probably got a pretty damn good story to tell, because otherwise they wouldn't give you all these tools. Like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, here it is. We've set up all these tools for you to look right at every little thing down to the minutia. Mm-hmm. Probably pretty confident on what they're delivering with Ampere.
You're 1,000% right. The timing is obviously in line with Ampere because again, I haven't tested yet. I'm speculating. I'm going to assume that the story is good. With the NVIDIA Reflex, announcement, NVIDIA had latency improving tools before. AMD's had them. Now it's branded and it's a bigger part of the story. That's for a reason. I'm going to assume Ampere is going to look really strong in that regard. We have a couple of questions. So Dave asking, do you have information from game companies regarding the delay between trigger pull and muzzle flash to integrate that into the calculation? So no, but keep in mind this is like a Rev 1 early beta. The LDAT thing is a 3D printed little box. So to get that information from a game is, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's very difficult. What we can get eventually when the tools are updated is every other part of the chain except for the display. So everything through the driver, through the OS, and then you can extrapolate, okay, that last part through the game engine and display was this much. So that finer grain detail will probably come. I don't think, it's going to be good to have the data. It's never bad to have more data. Right. What's more interesting is how the different platforms compare across a variety of games. Right. So the end result is what's important, because the games can be tweaked and the drivers can be tweaked. We'll see how that all plays out. So what the other question, is that a question?
Yeah, I'm out.
So the other one's not a question. So I think we're caught up.
I think we're good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, now, what occurs to me here is that there's nothing about everybody, I'm sure some of the folks out there, especially folks that pick one team or the other as their favorite, they may get a little twitch in the fact, NVIDIA gave you all these tools and they're telling you to look at it this way, and well, actually, if you think about it, every bit of it makes sense. from click to photon on the display. Makes perfect sense. Performance per watt makes perfect sense, and the way it's being measured all kind of makes perfect sense. There's no real mystery here. There's no wrinkle. There's no spin. It is what it is. And again, obviously, if NVIDIA's engineering tools for folks to measure it in a convenient way, probably because they feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the last part of the puzzle is FrameView. FrameView one. So NVIDIA had FrameView before.
Yep. If
you've used something like CapFrameX or Fraps, it's basically a little tool to capture frame rate data from games that don't have built-in tools. The newest stuff with this latest version 1.1 is it has LDAD and PCCAD integration. So if you're running FrameView without the PCAD hardware, it'll show power from the API, whatever's being reported from the GPU and the drivers. But if you have PCAD, it will integrate, so you can get the actual power numbers in there. And it also works, across, I think it's Vulkan and a couple other APIs now as well. FrameView is actually, if you want to test the performance of your system and the game that you're playing doesn't have any kind of built-in tools, super, super easy. Just download it, run it. It'll have an overlay right on the screen, and then bang, it's right there. You can see, change the settings, see what your frame rate is, see what your, percentile frame times are. It's super, super easy.
Yeah.
It's very handy stuff. Yeah. And to have the additional insight, now it changes my, our workflow. If I could show you what I can't show you what the test rig looks like right now, but the friggin' spaghetti of wires coming out of it is a little nutty. But we will now be able to tell you, hey, in this game at this setting, this was what the latency was, and with this particular workload, here's what min-max average power was. So real interesting stuff. So I think my autofocus is bugging. Let me see if I can fix that. Let me just get it back on my face. Is that
fine.
Better?
I think you're fine. Yeah.
I got an IM saying my focus is messed up. So quick question from Joe Nexus. Do you think the Xbox Series X at 500 helped NVIDIA give games better price performance ratio? I'm not really sure.
I think what he's getting at is so Xbox Series X powered by AMD, they've invested a ton into optimizing console performance and creating a custom or semi-custom chip for Microsoft and certainly for Sony as well. There's a lot of resources that goes into that business unit. Was it taken away? I guess maybe is the question. Was it taken away from the PC master race, GPU development and ecosystem development? Hard to say, but there is no question that is a massive R&D investment in consoles. I think that's the question.
And I'm gonna come at it from another direction. I think over the life of a console or PC, regardless of, unless you go nuts for like a $20,000 PC, the PC is always the better value because the games are so much cheaper. Yeah. How many weekends have you bought 3 games on a Steam sale because they were only $5? That never happens on the leading edge consoles. If you factor in the price of the games and the gaming PC, especially if you're conservative with your PC build, the PC in the long run is way cheaper, way better value. Makes the price performance ratio way better for the PC.
You wouldn't be biased though, would you?
I am super biased, but it's fact. So let's say you spend $500 on a console, right? Another $80 for a controller, 3 games at $60 a pop, right? You're up there. If you spend a G on a PC, but all your games end up being $10 in the long run, and then you get, like you save so much in the long run with more games and just a better experience and a device that does a lot more stuff. So in my opinion, it would take very tough to convince me the PC is not the better value. So go ahead. Sorry, we had a bunch of stuff in the chat too, but
and we should start think about wrapping. But I think what's interesting to me is the business model dynamic. There's a reason AMD went after that console business. There's a reason. I mean, Nvidia could have gone after it, as well. They maybe, the way these things go, there's a threshold of pain when it comes to margin and all that good stuff. And these are the dynamics that we don't see as consumers that, go on in the negotiations in the back rooms But yeah, it will be interesting to see how this bet for AMD to resource console development plays out for future generation, PC, GPU solutions from AMD. And I mean, Nvidia, we all know, I mean, at least the initial view is that Ampere should kill it. And gosh knows GeForce RTX 2020 series killed it pretty well too. So I don't know.
Yeah,
it's all fun stuff. I'm sorry, go for it. Quick questions, and then
no. So just
we'll
quick
wrap.
stuff. Tuan was saying theoretically with the Xbox, with a web browser, you could use it as a PC with Office 365 and Google Apps. That's where everything's going. Ubiquitous computing. Maybe not this gen, but next gen. It's just going to be ubiquitous computing everywhere. What else we got going on? Bootman making a funny joke about how latency in the old days was a hair across your mouse ball. Absolutely true. And, when you flip over and clean it out and you peel off the gunk from the rollers, disgusting stuff. Yeah, man. We've been around long enough to remember that too. I think we're caught up. I think that's about it.
Before that's an interesting topic actually, and then we'll wrap on that. Just real quickly, I'm wondering what could be the difference. Okay, so I'm thinking again, what's Nvidia's motivation here? Click to Photon. Could there be a difference in between the brands in that regard? Or is it more like, I guess there could be, and
so
depending on
the message would be right.
Frame rate.
If this card is lower latency and you're a competitive gamer, you immediately have an advantage with this card.
Sure, right? I get that, but I'm wondering is it really going to be that measurable? Maybe is it that different between 20 series and 30 series, or 30 series and Radeon RX 6000? Be fun to find out.
We have 720 hertz monitors. It'll matter.
Well, I mean, if V-Sync's off, we'll find out next week.
Yeah, we're gonna find out next week, pretty soon. Yep. Good luck with that. All right, cool. Well, hey, with that, we should wrap it all up and bid you folks adieu. Find us on the web at HotHardware.com. In the weeks ahead, very soon. We will be giving away a killer gaming rig. Chris is working on that review, and then we're going to time a giveaway of said system. Chris, it's all on you, buddy. No pressure. Okay. But once we get the EK Fluid Gaming rig review near completion, we'll be putting one up, identical system up for reviews, for giveaway. So swing on by hothardware.com, where you can find us on the web, twitter.com/hothardware, youtube.com/hothardware, or hothardware vids. Thumb up, subscribe, please. Get notifications when we go live or when we launch some new content. We'd love to have you with us. And thanks again for stopping by.